All right. Well, good morning. I am here with Joel Reeder, owner of Red River Homes, and I really appreciate you coming in and talking today.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah. So really, I just wanted to kind of get started and tell us a little bit about where you're from and how
Mhm.
you got into home building.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of takes me back to growing up. When I got out of high school, I graduated early, and my dad kind of tricked me because I didn't want to go to college. And I was 16, and my dad said, "Well, you got to go to college, or I can't, keep you on the insurance." So I was like, "Okay, well, I'll teach you." So I said, "Well, I'll go to trade school."
Okay.
Well, that's what I did. So I went to West Kentucky Technical College in Paducah, and I took the carpentry program, and that's where I first started learning how to build homes. And pretty much the first, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 homes that I ever worked on or ever built were Habitat for Humanity homes.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
that's how I learned the trade, and finished that. And then carpentry's always just been my passion. I've always loved doing woodworking and whatever it is. But I know my grandfather was a mechanic. I never got any good at turning wrenches, but I was good with the skill saw. So that's what I've always enjoyed doing. So anyway, I worked for some builders in Paducah for a while, building homes, framing crews, all that kind of stuff, and then decided to join the military. So I left for the military. And then after I got out of the military, I still worked for the Department of Defense as a private contractor, but I would still do stuff on the side. I'd flip homes and
Mm-hmm.
buy a home, renovate it, sell it, and do all that kind of stuff. And so,
And you were doing that where?
Virginia at that time.
Okay.
And anyway, was able to come back here to Clarksville, and just finally got to a point where I told my wife, I said, "Hey, I want to go back to what I love doing." And so I switched back over and got back into construction and worked for some local builders around here for a while until I was able to start my own company, and got into really did a lot of renovations, additions, and things like that, until I finally got to the point where I just decided all I want to do is focus on home building.
Sure.
And then in addition to that, I got my commercial contractor's license, and so now I do some commercial work as well. But really, my passion is home building.
My dad was the director of a vocational school. So,
Okay.
what led you to the tech school in Paducah? Best around, or is
I
there?
was the only one
Okay.
around.
Okay.
I grew up in Mayfield, Kentucky, is where I actually
Yeah.
grew up,
Okay.
and there's really
Sure.
nothing there. But I had done some trade school stuff in the local high school in Mayfield, where we did electrical, welding, machine shop. I liked welding the best. Didn't care anything for electrical. Machine shop was okay. I enjoyed it. And I guess since I had those three, I thought, well, what about carpentry? Because they offered, obviously they offered all of those as well. And I don't know, I just kind of fell into it,
Yeah.
and I liked it. What I really loved about the program there was that it wasn't, we weren't in the classroom all the time. Our classroom was a Habitat for Humanity house. And so we're, laying block, or we're framing, or we're hanging drywall, we're doing, all the trades, we're doing everything. So I really got to have hands-on every aspect of building. And and it's funny, my teacher at the time, he's passed away now, his name was Harlan Brazier, great guy. And he would do jobs on the side. So he would hire me to come out,
Nice.
and I would work with him after school hours, and we roof houses. And so yeah, I did a lot of roofing during that time, back when I was young and had a good back.
Yeah. So you got a side hustle going
Yeah,
right right out of the gate. Well,
Absolutely.
a lot of our client base have an affiliation with the military. So,
Yep.
what did you do in the military?
When I was in the military, I was military intelligence, and so I was initially stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington.
Yeah.
Then I went to Germany. I was actually stationed in Grafenwehr, and no, most people hate Grafenwehr, but I loved it. I was suit and tie. I didn't have to be out in the field all the time, so
Right.
I was a little bit different. So it was a great area. But deployed to Afghanistan, and then after that, I went. After I became a defense contractor, I went back to Afghanistan another 3 times. So I did 4 years in Afghanistan. So
And
I know
what
what it is
time
to be.
frame? Yeah, what time frame? Sorry to interrupt, but were you in the military?
So I was in the military from 2000 to 2006, and then after that, I continued to work for the DoD until 2013, I believe, is when I finally
Okay.
stopped.
Yeah.
So from 2000, my first deployment, I deployed 2005 was the first time. And then I continued on sporadically. Sometimes one time was a 14-month deployment. One time was like 12 months. One was 8 months, I think. So all in all, it accumulated to about 4 years total in country.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's back when we were busy.
yeah, well, and it's funny. I got out of the military right after that first deployment because I told my wife, I said, "Look, I don't want to be. I see everybody rotating out all the time. I'm like, I don't want to be deployed all the time."
Right.
And so I went back to Paducah after I got out, and my uncle owned a painting business, and so I went back to work for him, and I was painting for a while. And can I just tell you how much I hate painting? I despise painting, but there was no job opportunities, and so I used the skill set that the Army had taught me, and I was able to get a job. That's what brought me to Virginia. And lo and behold, I ended up spending most of my time as a contractor, still deploying. So,
right.
But it was kind of the at the end of it. That's why I kind of got out of it. Was we started having a family, had kids. I was gone all the time, and that last deployment was the worst one when I had, I think my twins. I think they were 3 years old at the time, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And just leaving
That's
them
tough.
that last time was just like, all right, this is it. I told my wife, I said, I'm never doing this again. So we're done.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I made the change.
Yeah. Well, obviously, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It's interesting because I was Iraq, deployments, and then got to Afghanistan in 2013, about the time you were wrapping up.
Yep.
So, yeah. Well, thank you. And whereabouts in Virginia?
Charlottesville. I
Okay.
worked at the National Ground Intelligence Center in Charlottesville.
Okay. So now you're back in Clarksville, building homes. What projects are you working on right now?
Right now, I've got two houses that we're doing, and Domino's Pizza, actually. So
really, okay,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I try to, right now, comfort level, 2-3 houses a year, but is great. But I really want to ramp that up, and so
Sure.
that's kind of my end state. But
yeah. Well, we get asked a ton of questions about building.
Sure.
A lot of people dream of buying a piece of land, building a house. So I really want to kind of get into that with you because, yes, we're on the real estate side, but wanted to hear from the horse's mouth some of the things that are most critical to think about when, searching out a piece of land to build on, because not all land is created the same. That's as it pertains to building. There's soil tests, there's different topography, there's soil absorption rates, all kinds of things. There's building in codes, there's restrictions. So I want to kind of get into that with you, and I also want to at least kind of wade into this subject of our city and counties perceived lack of attainable, affordable housing. It was interesting because we just did a deep dive on that about a week ago and are getting ready to put a video out there. But in this zip code, we're currently obviously in the 37043 zip code. There are only 5 3-bedroom homes priced under $250,000 that weren't total gut jobs.
Right.
So with 6.75% interest rates, that makes it tough, just based on our counties, median household income. So
yeah, interest rates are definitely hurting everything right now for sure. I know there's plenty of people that want to go out and build a house, but the interest rates being what they are, everybody's expecting a drop, and I think that's one thing that's holding people back from being able to build or even purchase right now. So, but yeah, the land factor. For what you're talking about, that's a really big deal because I hear people all the time. They'll call me and they'll say, "Yeah, I want to build a house and minimum 5 acres," and I just laugh because I'm like, "Good luck finding 5 acres, for a reasonable price."
Right.
And I think one time I did a search, and it was just like I think I was only able to find one 5-acre property that was under $250,000. And
We just contracted one that was 2.25.
Yep.
And that's a lot of times those are flag style lots with a long driveway, which then you've got to talk with the client and factor that cost in. It's a big when you're running a 150-yard long driveway, that adds up quick.
It is, especially when you consider you also got to run water lines from the road, you got to run utilities from the road. Nowadays everybody wants to do, and of course this is what I want to do, is do underground electric.
Sure.
But that's incredibly expensive when you're running a long distance back from the road. Because that's that the cost of doing that is on the homeowner, having to dig the ditch and put in the conduit and all that. That's on the homeowner to do. They have to pay for all that. So that's a huge cost that a lot of people are not really going to consider. And then by the time you get to the end of the build, you've already spent all your money doing all this other stuff, and now all you've got is a gravel driveway, but you got no money left. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to settle for a gravel driveway.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I wanted to kind of approach in this way would be, let's say you're currently in a home. You live in Clarksville. You're in a home. You're in a neighborhood house. Or maybe you're out on Fort Campbell and you've got a couple years until retirement, but you want to stay here. Right. God bless our city and county. We're doing a lot of good things to keep people here with our jobs. You're a builder. You've been doing this a long time. If you could put yourself in those two situations, you want to build a house. When you want to find a piece of land, you want to build a house. What are some of the key things you're going to do, and what kind of steps would you take?
Well, obviously the land search is the very first one. Well, no, I take that back. The very first one is, I would recommend that they call you and secure you as their realtor so you can help them find land. The land search is obviously the first one. You see the city, the county growing out in different directions. And so if you're going to get anything affordable, you're going to have to be willing to have somewhat of a commute. You're going to have to go out further than you probably want to. If you're going to get anything affordable, that's just my personal opinion.
Or available. Most of our neighborhoods, our neighborhood right now, we've got 2 lots left. It's an established neighborhood. There's homes that have been there 25 plus years, but in the 2 lots that are left, significant topographical situations, and not inexpensive.
Right.
So you're either going to struggle to find something available, pay a premium to be inside city limits, or to your point.
Right. And so, for the lots that you're talking about, those are great if you can find those, because one, you've already got, somebody's come in and they've done all the basic infrastructure development. So your water lines are there, your sewer lines, all that kind of stuff is already in. Right. And that's great because now you don't have to worry about, trying to do septic and all that other kind of stuff too. But again, you're going to end up paying, you could pay $80,000 to $160,000 for a lot that is going to be not even an acre in some cases.
Yeah, we're seeing, 0.35, 0.45 acre lots that are 125,000 plus.
Exactly.
In established neighborhoods.
Exactly. So that's going to be the hard part. Is, to me as a homeowner, that would be a hard pill for me to swallow, because I want the land just like everybody else does. Everybody wants the 5 acres. Well, so do I. Yeah. I get that. I don't have 5 acres, but I'd love to have it.
Sure.
But yeah, so if you're gonna settle, if you want to be in the city and you're fine with doing a build in the city, hey, that's great. Just understand that you're going to be paying a premium for that lot. Now, that does take a lot of the guesswork out of everything, because that, like I said, it's already been developed. You've already got all the utilities necessary. Everything is there. You don't have to worry about, zoning requirements and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff's done. Right. So it takes a huge part out of it. If you want to go that route, great. But here's what I'm seeing is that I think we've been spoiled for a long time. And I think that for a while, what you saw was, everybody building bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so everybody's wanting to build the 4,500 square foot house. right?
Right.
And, you know, back in the day, you know, you could do that for $400,000. All right. Well, you do that today, you're going to be spending over $1 million, you know? And so it's just not, the cost of everything has gone up so dramatically. The cost of materials, everything, cost of labor has gone up dramatically. And so you're just not going to be able to achieve that. And what I foresee in the future, I see us having a correction, and I believe that the houses coming up are going to be much smaller. I think we're going to be getting back down to more of your 2,500 square foot home is a good size home.
Yeah, we've got a 2,500 square foot ranch with a bonus, and and you know, our daughters have moved out,
right?
And that's a lot of house for us.
That's right.
Right. So
but
people are in these various stages of life, and they're realizing that I probably don't need north of 3,000 square feet.
Exactly. And so I think that's going to be a kind of a market correction, if you will, where people start to realize, hey, we don't need all this square footage. We can drop it back down and get it back to a much more affordable. But in addition to that, I think we're going to start seeing, you know, if you go around, you see the old style back in the day, you had your normal ranch of like a 1,200 square foot. Yeah. I think we're going to start seeing some of that stuff again.
I agree.
Because I think that's the only thing that's going to be affordable. And even with today's prices, I think they're still going to be pricey. We've done a lot of renovations on those types of houses as well. And so we go in and, you know, you have customers that are like, well, we want a bigger house. We got a growing family. We're in this 1,200 square foot ranch. We need more space. And they go around and they realize, okay, well, we can't buy what we want or what we need. Mm-hmm. And so the only option then is to do an addition, or, you know, do a remodel and an addition and things like that. So I've seen a lot of that too. And that's clearly an option for people if you can find the house, you know, the right house where you can spend that money and do it. And that's usually very feasible. But yeah, as a builder, I think smaller properties are going to be the new thing.
One of the things that also constrains people in established neighborhoods is their deed restrictions may limit the size of home. That's so right. You might, you know, spend $140,000 on a lot and want to put a smaller ranch style home, but there's a minimum square footage requirement, and or you've got to build so many square feet for the appraisal to absorb the cost of that lot.
That's right.
And so that's another challenge that people often are confronted with.
There's a subdivision I'm building in right now has a minimum square footage of 2,500 square foot.
Right.
And then of course, you know, also you gotta think about HOAs too, because HOAs can really gum up the works for you depending on, you know, what you want to build. And you know, a lot of these HOAs, you have to submit the plans to the HOA. They have to approve it. They have to approve the type of siding, the colors. Sure. They have to approve everything.
Sure.
And so, and some of them will require, like one I'm building in requires a certain type of window, which is incredibly expensive.
I was going to say, it's not the least expensive
window.
No,
it's the most expensive window.
It is, yeah.
And so, you know, it's kind of like there's some things, just choosing that lot, you've got to know going into it that, hey, the HOA is going to require me to do these types of products, which are going to limit my options on, I'm going to have to spend so much money on the outside. How much money do I have left for the inside?
Sure.
So do I really get that higher end custom cabinet, or do I got to go with the cheap route?
Yeah.
Because I've spent all my money on the exterior.
Yeah, you've got the most expensive windows,
That's
but
right.
You've got, you know, vinyl kitchen floor.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
because they don't care about the inside, they just care about the outside.
Yeah, and most of our clients have a love-hate relationship with HOAs. Yeah. You know, they don't want to be told what to do necessarily because they believe they'll police themselves and you know, keep their homes up. Mm-hmm. But sometimes they're glad when there is an HOA if there are neighbors who are either renting or something like that, right. and they see a house going down,
right.
And falling into disrepair, then they want that HOA to come in and you know.
But, you know, at the same time, that's another thing to think about on cost too, is that some of the HOA fees can be pretty exorbitant.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you buy that lot, that is one of the things that you got to seriously think about. And I think I think just, you know, the freedom of not having all of those issues and things, I think that's one thing that drives people to want those 5 acres.
Yeah.
Because they don't want that neighbor right on top of them.
Right.
And they just want to be able to do their own thing on their own property and not be told what to do. and that's great. I mean, I love that. But again, that getting that 5-acre lot is going to cost a lot.
Yeah. So right now, if we think 5 acres, my mind starts going, out toward, kind of Woodlawn area, south of the river. And it's amazing what's considered, far out.
Right.
5 years ago, that seems like the distance is tripled. Now
Yep.
people are very comfortable, or maybe, out to our east towards Adams. So let's look at some of those rural settings. So we've talked about purchasing a typical subdivision lot in an established neighborhood. Now let's kind of shift to more of a rural setting where what we see is anywhere from 1.5 acres up. So you're a builder. What are you looking for there?
Well, one thing I'm worried about there is going to be any kind of restrictions for zoning. Now, a lot of times what people will do is, there's a big chunk of land. I see this a lot where maybe a family owns, a farm, and it's 150 acres, 200 acres, whatever. One of the family members wants to build a house. So what they do is they take out 5 acres of it and they deed it over. The reason why they do it in 5 acres is because that doesn't trigger them to have to go to zoning to have it rezoned. It still stays agricultural. And so at that point, nobody can tell you that you can't build a home on that. So you start getting into the smaller lots, then you start getting into those zoning issues where you got to make sure that, hey, the county is okay with actually building here. And so you'll see that in some cases where, like with property in certain areas where the zoning commission has said no, where a builder has come in and said, hey, we want to put in a subdivision here. And they say no, they shoot it down. And so the only option then left to that homeowner or to the landowner is to divide it up into 5-acre parcels. So that's why you see that a lot. So that's where, that's the very first thing I'd be thinking about. Number two is we just saw this with a case in Springfield where same situation, father deeds 2 acres to his daughter to build a house.
Okay.
But then they go in and they do the soil test. Well, it doesn't perk enough. And so the only way they can actually build on it now is for him to give his daughter an additional 3 acres. And so that's, so you have those kinds of issues where you got to make sure that lot is going to be suitable for a septic tank.
Yeah. And let's just dive into that right quick because doesn't need to be a deep dive, but a lot of people who aren't in this every day like we are, they hear soil test, soil scientist, perk, septic. In 45 seconds, can you just explain what you meant when you said the 2 acres didn't perk?
So the soil, because you're using a septic tank, now everybody should know a septic tank is just a big concrete box that all the sewage goes into, and then it's got field lines that goes out. And all of the waste that comes out of your plumbing has to be able to seep into the ground, and the ground has to be able to absorb it, okay? If the ground is so compacted that it can't absorb all that and it can't release into the soil, what'll happen is you'll get pooling in the backyard. So you'll have sewage actually floating up to the surface. And, you see it in some cases where maybe a house is rated for, maybe they're thinking 5 people are going to live here. But for some reason, another family has to come in and move in with them, right? And so now you got 10 people living in this house. And over a period of a couple of months, they start noticing, hey, we got this wet spot in the backyard. Well, it's because their field lines were designed for a 5-person family, right?
Gotcha.
Not a 10-person family. And so in some cases, it's just a matter of, hey, we need to add more field lines. But sometimes it's the soil itself is just not really suitable. And so that's what that soil test is for, is to determine whether or not it can actually absorb the waste.
And the one thing I would tell to anyone who's currently searching for land is that is very, very critical when it comes to how land is priced. So if you see a piece of land that is seemingly priced too good to be true, it's probably because it perks for like a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, or there is no perk on it yet. And so the seller has it priced accordingly because it so severely limits what you can do.
Exactly.
Another thing that I'd like you to kind of speak on is some of the dirt work that's often required when you go to purchase a piece of land, whether that be in driveways, culverts, clearing, et cetera. What can you
some of the properties that people have sent me out to take a look at to see if it's suitable for building. It's like right off the bat, you can tell, look, there's no way that you can even get a good entrance into this property because it's so hilly and you've got a creek running through it. And it's like, okay, well, you have to put in massive culverts and, basically build a bridge over to where you want to, so there's a lot of land clearing that has to be done in those cases. But your natural streams and creeks and things like that are running through properties, those are things you got to be very cognizant of. And you start damming those up, you're going to cause problems with the county. So that's going to be something that the county is going to make you do certain things with that property regardless. So, that's one consideration. But then number two is when you get into those tight situations too is, where are your closest utilities to that, and consider the cost of adding the utilities to that property. What else? Land clearing. So, let's talk about slab versus crawl space build too.
Sure.
So a lot of times, we don't live in a flat land here. Okay. It's rolling hills. So a lot of times they come in and I've had people bring me plans to build a house, and it's like it calls for a slab and they want it to look exactly like this. Right. And so it's like, literally it's like one or two steps up off the ground and boom, you're in the house. Right. Mm-hmm. But then when you go look at the land, you see the contour of the land. It's like by the time you actually build the house, you're 6-7 block high in the front. So now you got this gigantic steps, right? Well, if you're an older couple wanting to build your forever home and you don't want to deal with steps, that causes an issue.
Right.
So if you're dead set on doing a slab, then you've got to do dirt work and you've got to build that ground up to make it suitable for that slab. So those are some of the things. Now, normally if you're going to do a crawl space, it's not really necessary to do a lot of dirt work because you can do the crawl space according to that and just build up one end higher, so on and so forth. But if you're going to do a slab, then yes, you have to consider the cost of the dirt work, and that's why you want that perfect flat spot, to be able to build.
Which are rare.
Right,
and then again your tract of land is going to be priced accordingly based on everything we've just talked about. Soil absorption rates, topography, the slope, so
tree removal. There's all that kind of stuff. And luckily, if you're going into a situation where you can buy a large acreage, sometimes you can, have a service come in and they'll actually pay you for your trees and remove them. So, sometimes you can sell the lumber and get some of that removed for free, but there's still going to be a lot of cleanup that you're going to have to do after the fact.
And if someone is watching this right now and calls you, I'm assuming, which can be dangerous, but I'm assuming you've got an established network that takes a lot of these considerations off the shoulders of the client.
Yes.
You've got people, okay, well, call so-and-so for this, so-and-so for that.
Yes. When, I don't expect somebody to call me and actually know anything.
Right.
So I expect them to, if they call me and they say, hey, Joel, we've got this property, and we want to build this style of a house on it. First thing I want to do is I want to go look at the property.
Sure.
And then I can sit down with the customer and explain to them, hey, this is what type of a house I think we could put on here. These are the considerations. I would go through all of this in detail with them.
Right.
I'm not going to ask them to actually go out and take care of any of this stuff themselves. I'll do that for them after they understand the full scope of the project.
How long would you recommend people give themselves between, the time they call you to assess a particular property they're interested in, or they already have, right? Because this could be, cart before the horse. At what point in this process? So let's just say, Bob and Mary, they contact me. We have them on a land search. They find a piece of property that they believe is suitable. At what point do you recommend they contact you? And then how long from the time they contact you and purchase that land to the time they're in their dream home would you recommend a person plan for?
So I think that depending upon, there's a number of factors that's going to affect that. But I've seen the planning process can run, 4 to 5, 6 months, depending upon all the things that we have to accomplish beforehand. Because even once we get all of those things established, we still have to sit down and establish the whole parameters of the build itself.
Sure.
Selection process is what your house is going to look like. Because I can't just throw out a number and say, hey, this is what your house is going to cost. Everybody wants to know, what's it going to cost? Well, that's totally dependent on you.
Sure.
You want me to just build you a big old white box and call it a day? Cool. But if you want this type of siding, this type of stone, you want a metal roof versus a shingle roof, all these things. Those are all selections that couple has to make together. And each one, is going to affect the bottom line on what we can do. Typically what I try to do is I give people a ballpark, and I'm usually pretty close to that ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually very rarely, but sometimes I actually do come in quite under budget. And so like I'm building a house in Nashville right now, and it's a 2,500 square foot house, cost to build. What we calculated was we were assuming around $505,000. At the end of the day, we're going to be coming in somewhere around 460.
Wow.
So it's kind
You
of
don't
rare.
hear that very often.
It's kind of rare. And it was funny. I was telling this to the banker too. I was talking to the bank, and we kind of laughed about it. I'm like, yeah, when was the last time you heard a contractor say I'm under budget?
Right.
He's like, never.
Yeah.
I'm like, well,
yeah.
I am. Here we are.
Right.
And so, because I do everything I can to try to cut costs where I can, and save the homeowner money, because I don't want you just wasting your money. That's stupid. So, but it really does depend on all the selections that you make along the way. So anyway, what I do, like, that's what I say, is I try to give them a ballpark of here's where I think we're at. And then we're going to shape that and try to get it down closer to reality once I understand all the selections that you have.
So they found the piece of land. Yep. They've consulted with you. How involved are most of your clients in that process?
They're honestly not very involved in the initial stages as far as getting all that stuff taken care of. I pretty much take care of all that for them. Okay. And I just let them know. I stay in contact with them, and I'll let them know, hey, this is what's going on. This is what the state said. I have got to get the state to come out and do their tests and tell us where we can put a septic tank and all that kind of stuff. So they can be as involved as they want to be, or not involved at all. I've got a couple I'm building for right now. They're in Texas, and they are perfectly fine to just stay out of it. And Joel, when you need something, just give me a call. Right. And so that's what I do. Right. It's like, hey, Bill, we're ready for paint now. What colors are we going with? Sure. And so but then you got some people that want to be on the job site every day and see the progress. Sure. They're antsy. And I get it. They're spending a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
Sure, a lot of money. And especially someone who may not have worked with you. Obviously, you've got a great reputation, but the different clients, just like our clients, have different needs. So I totally get that. When would you prefer to be contacted by a client? Before or after they purchase the land, and why?
I would say probably as they are in the process of purchasing the land. Once they have found the land, they put in an offer. If they're working, as long as they're working with you, then I can wait until after it's sold, and they actually own the property. But if because I know a good realtor that is going to walk them through that same process, and you're going to make sure that all of those things are taken care of.
We're not gonna listen to a vision of a 4-bed, 2,800 square foot ranch home and allow someone to buy a 2-acre lot that perks for a 2-bedroom.
Right. But if it was somebody that wasn't working with a realtor, which I wouldn't advise, obviously, then I would say, yeah, give me a call before you actually close on that property, because I'd like to take a look at it first and say, yeah, this is a good buy, or no, you're making a stupid decision.
Right.
So if they're working with a realtor that knows what they're doing, hey, great. Buy the land. As soon as you bought the land, give me a call. Let's get the ball rolling.
Absolutely.
That's where I would prefer to come in. But that's not always the case. And then a lot of times, like I said, people are gifted land from their family. And it's like, well, they're not going to turn it down. It's like, well, this is what I was gifted, so let's make it work, and we'll figure out a way to make it work. I mean, usually you can, but sometimes sometimes you can't.
Right.
So.
Well, one subject I wanted to touch upon. So we've talked about purchasing established lots in a development. We've talked about purchasing more rural lots that are typically going to be larger. Tiny homes, right?
Love them.
And the reason I wanted to kind of focus on this is twofold. One, your background in Habitat homes, Habitat for Humanity homes. And then secondly, we have a lot of clients who are downsizing.
Yep.
And one of the areas that I'm interested in learning more about and hearing your take on would be downsizing to perhaps more of what might be considered a tiny house, but maybe someone wants that feel, something easy to maintain, easy and economical to heat, cool, but maybe they want a detached building to store, side-by-sides and boats, etc. Talk a little bit about that and your experience there.
So I love that concept. I guess you have to define the terms here, because what we say tiny home, everybody's seen the HGTV tiny homes, right?
Sure.
And it's like, at least in my opinion, that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a tiny home. We're not building it on a trailer that you can, where we defy building and codes because we're putting it on a trailer so it doesn't fall under building codes. Now it's under the Department of Transportation.
Right.
That's really what they do, because building and codes won't allow, for, subpar ceilings, shorter walls, things like that. They don't allow for that. So, are we saying a tiny home is 900 square feet, or are we saying it's 600 square feet? Anywhere in that range. Now, I've built one. The smallest I've built was 457 square feet.
Okay.
And it was literally a one bedroom. Next to it was was a living room, and then you had kitchen and bath.
Okay.
And that was it. That's all she wanted. It was perfect for her. Those I think they're great. I think they're fun. In fact, that was probably it's probably the funnest build I've ever done. I loved it.
Yeah.
I just did, because it felt so cabinish. We did, tongue and groove pine on the walls, the whole 9 yards. And so it felt like I was going into a hunting lodge or something,
Yeah.
Or some place like you'd stay in Gatlinburg or something, but a small one, not one of the massive ones.
And you can make so we've got a cabin up on Kentucky Lake. It's about 600 square feet, but it's 2-bedroom, bath, kitchen, living room. Then you've got a screened-in porch and a large deck off the back.
Yeah.
So the one limiting factor there is that it wasn't built with washer and dryer, but it could be added. But
so here's what I love right now and they're starting to make their way into the United States. We've traveled a lot, and I've seen, a lot of these washers and dryers in other countries and stuff. But a lot of these places that you go, they're actually in the kitchen, just like the dishwasher is. They'll have a washer and dryer. It's a combo unit, so it's just one unit, and you can put them in the kitchen under the countertop, and it blends in just perfectly fine with the cabinetry.
Yeah. Wow.
So you don't even have to have a separate laundry room. It can be right there with all the other appliances in the kitchen. And so those are starting to become more popular in the United States, where they've been, heavily used in Europe and other locations. But it might take 3 hours or 3.5 hours to do a load of laundry because it washes it and dries it, in the same machine.
Sure.
But if you're one person, you're living by yourself, or you're just a couple, and you don't have 5 kids that are
playing
using
sports,
playing sports and going through 10 towels a day.
Sure.
You don't have that much laundry, so it's not that big of a deal. And so that's a really effective way to limit the space and not have to account for that additional laundry room.
Yeah, and the reason I brought the cabin up is because, in my mind, I can visualize what 600 square feet represents. So if we do look at that, let's just say 600 to 1,000 square feet.
Sure.
And, the reason I brought up the detached building is because a lot of our clientele that is seeking more of a rural setting most tracts of land require upkeep, right? Whether you're, even if you live in the middle of the woods, it's like, okay, well, you're probably going to need a chainsaw. You're going to have some equipment. So you're going to need a place to store this stuff.
Yep.
So what would be, let's say someone watching right now says, you know what, I think I could do that. I could see myself living in a cabin-esque tiny home with a detached building out on, 2 acres of land in southern Montgomery County. How would you approach that vision?
There's a couple of different ways you could do it. Talking about just doing the tiny house like we're talking about, and then doing that detached property or that detached garage. If cost is a major factor, there's plenty of low cost solutions, I think, for some of those detached type buildings. You could either build an actual garage, or they have the metal buildings that they can set up. It takes them like 2 days. A whole crew comes in, and it's a unit that's all put together, and all you got to do is basically have a concrete pad. There's those types of possibilities. The only thing that I would caution people on is, as they're doing that, just remember, that you might be able to get that detached building built for X amount of dollars, but you still need to consider the cost of running electricity to it. Are you going to have, like a water spigot or anything like that out there? That's additional cost, because you're going to have to tie into the main house for that. And so those are really the only things that, and usually, you're not going to have an HVAC system out there. Sometimes people will put in like a propane heater or something like that for the wintertime if they tinker out in the garage or whatever. That's fine. But, those are just some of the things that you got to consider. It's not just an empty shell. You do need to consider having some, level of utilities out there as well.
Yeah, and there's fine print, because a lot of us see those ads, metal building for, and you're like, wow.
You're like, how could it be that cheap?
Yeah.
Well, that's why.
Yeah, that's just the shell, and it's not, there's not, a lot of people I could envision wanting to have, perhaps guest quarters out there.
Yep.
Especially if they went to a very small, like you built for the lady, a 1-bedroom. It's like, okay, well, let's put a guest quarters in the loft of the detached building or something along those lines. Obviously, it's going to be heated, it's going to be cooled, it's going to be plumbed. You're gonna increase the cost. But I'm still seeing with that tiny house model, one, it's, and I want to defer to you, the expert, but it would open up a lot more types of land for this, right? Because especially on this hard to perk land. And then what, if any, types of restrictions have you run into in working with different counties, et cetera?
Honestly, probably the biggest restrictions that I've run into have been dealing with the septic, because the septic, like I said, when that septic gets put in for an existing house. So a lot of these smaller properties, they're like the one I built for that lady, that was on an existing property behind the house. So it was kind of that guest quarters. Okay. Sure. So it wasn't like she went out and bought 2 acres and I just plopped a tiny house on it.
Right.
So that was an issue, because we already had the existing septic tank and all that kind of stuff. All the utilities were there. All we had to do was tie into the house. But that was a royal pain trying to work with, can we even tie into this septic system? And at the end of the day, we ended up having to do modifications to the septic system and extend the field lines and things like that. So, but one thing I do like about the whole tiny home concept is that, yes, you start off tiny, but you always have that potential room for growth as well. So, because you've got the property, if you needed to build on, and say you're not, you don't want to put down, $500,000 right now, but say, okay, well, I've got, a couple $100,000. I want to buy this property, do this project. And then as I pay that down, or the interest rates get better, whatever, maybe I'll take out a loan and do an addition, or maybe I'll put in that guest quarters in that, in that detached garage. And so you always have that ability to kind of expand. And if you look at a lot of, unfortunately, I've had to tell certain people when they've come to me and they want an addition on their home, they just think, oh, well, it's simple, just build an addition. The problem with just doing addition to an existing home, it typically comes down to the roof line, that becomes an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Is how do I match up the roof line and tie this new addition into it? And it's really difficult when you're dealing with a house that's got a hip roof and not your straight gables, but and so with
Can you explain to our
that's kind of hard to explain. I knew you were going to ask me that.
I'm
sorry.
Just kind of quickly.
All right. A standard, if you look at a standard ranch house and it's got your straight roof that goes across,
sure.
You've got your 4, 5, 12, 6, 12 pitch for older houses. That end, the end of the house where the gable comes up, that is the gable, right? The gable end. A hip roof does the opposite. Instead of coming to a point, when it gets close, the roof turns the opposite direction, and so the shingles are exposed all the way around. So you don't have that gable end. Okay, so if I'm trying to build on to that, say I'm trying to do an addition going out the back, and I've got that hip roof to contend with, I've got to make modifications to the existing roof to be able to tie into it. So it gets a little bit more expensive. Just the way a new house is cut up, and the way architecturally and everything like that. Sometimes it's very difficult to design an addition for that house and it be cost effective. But if you're doing a standard, a basic tiny home, your roof line, it's so small, it's not going to be cut up a million different directions.
Sure.
So if I needed to add on to it in the future, I could.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of I don't know, maybe that's something that I would think of going, many years down the road.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't think of it first thing as you're building, but going into it, that's what I'd be thinking. Hey, 5 years down the road, is this thing situated to where I can actually build onto it?
I don't want to hold you to numbers, but right, ballpark figure. If you're watching right now with your expertise and experience as a builder, we've got a viewer that says, you know what, this sounds interesting. What ballpark? We both kind of sort of know. Let's say we can find a piece of land for, let's just say, $100,000. Ballpark to do a tiny house and let's just say a tiny house with no detached building, and then maybe a tiny house with a detached building. But what should people prepare themselves for mentally from a price point? Because it's such a big deal. Because I can tell people right now, 1,000 square foot home in Montgomery County that's what I would consider move-in ready, 3 beds, 1 bath, is going to run you anywhere from about $220,000 to $260,000. So, and that's going to get you probably something built in the
how much square footage did you say?
About 1,000 square feet.
Okay, so you're looking at $220 to $260 a square foot.
And that's going to get you something probably built between, let's just call it the mid 40s to the 80s, a 3-bed, 1-bath home in an established neighborhood. And so, a lot of people think, okay, well, that sounds good. Maybe I've got that kind of money, but, I'd really like to not be in a neighborhood. So, and just based on land prices, what's been your experience in constructing these tiny homes?
So depending on a lot of factors with the land and, your septic, your drive and all that kind of stuff, some of those prices don't change. It's just like if I've got to run electricity to it and I've got to run water to it, that doesn't matter if it's a 6,000 square foot house or a 600 square foot house. It's the same price to run those utilities. So the septic tank, now obviously it's a smaller septic tank, then you're not going to be required to have one that would facilitate a 5-bedroom house, but you're still going to be paying for that. So I still always try to tell people that the cost of construction, depending on a number of factors, can range from 180 to 220 a square foot, and depending on your selections. So is it going to be costly? Yeah, it's still going to be costly, but it's not your $500,000 home. I mean,
right.
could you get by with, get out of a situation like that for, under 250 for sure, but I think, cost of construction for the tiny home itself, you're looking, anywhere from $90,000 to $110,000 roughly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think just trying to, provide another option for people.
Sure.
Because right now, I think we have a lot of people that are sitting on a lot of equity. What I'm hearing from our clientele is primarily the interest rates, because basically what we've seen since 2010, so in 15 years, we've seen interest rates double, and quite frankly, we've seen home prices double. More than double, basically. So, we've got first-time home buyers struggling to find anything within their price range, and then we have existing homeowners sitting on, let's say, a 2.75% interest rate with, let's say, $350,000 of equity, but they're like, well, wait a second, I don't want to trade this in and then pay 6.75%, and so I'm buying a much less house, and so getting a lot less bang for the buck. So that's just something we're both contending with now in the market. But I think this discussion sheds light on, not only where to look for land, but how to look at that land, and then what some of the options are. So I want to let you kind of wrap this up with regards to what do you love most about building homes, and then how can people find you?
What do I love most about building homes? Man, it's kind of a tough one. There's something about working with your hands and seeing something that you've envisioned and you actually build it, create it, and see it come to fruition. So that's a big thing for me. So there's I get a lot of self-satisfaction out of that. Number two, one thing I do love about the industry that I'm in is it puts me in let's just say I've greatly increased my relationship statuses with so many people. I've gained some really good friends doing this, because these customers, I tell people, if you're going to build a house and you're going to pick a contractor to build that house, you better be able to get along with that contractor right from the get-go. Because by the end of the process, you're either going to love him or you're going to hate him.
Right.
And I mean, I've heard some horror stories.
Oh yeah, as have I.
And luckily, there's of all the customers I've ever had, I think there's probably only 2 that I've ever had that I would never work for again. The rest of them, some of them I consider some of my closest friends now.
Sure.
And we communicate all the time about stuff, and it's just, you build some really strong friendships with these people. That's one thing I do love about what I do, is working with the customers. A lot of people in my position, there's 2 different types of contractors out there. You got the ones that are like, nope, I am not dealing with customers at all. I'm building spec homes. That's it. Yeah. I'll take the risk because I don't want to deal with the customers. I don't want to deal with the change orders and all this other stuff. Then you've got some custom builders out there that, my goodness, they don't even allow the customer onto the property unless they're escorted by someone. They can't. I mean, it's like ridiculous. Yeah. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm spending $500,000 and I can't come look at my property as it's being built. Yeah. That to me is crazy. And I want to have a close relationship with the customers so that they know what to expect and that I get their vision to come to life. Because last thing I want to do is build this house and then them be unhappy with, well, we wanted this, but then, that Joel guy, he gave us this instead.
Sure.
And, I don't want that. I want everybody to walk away with a good feeling after the process. It's going to be a stressful process.
Yeah.
End of story. I mean, I hope look, if you're a couple coming to me, I hope your marriage is solid.
Yeah. Well, I tell people all the time with real estate, like, we're dealing, if you're buying or selling a home, we're dealing with other human beings.
That's right.
There's no such thing as a completely stress-free process, but it's how you manage it.
That's right.
And communication
is absolutely key. And so that's one of the things I do that I feel like I strive to try to provide that to the customers. But no, in order to reach me, I mean, redriverhometn.com is my website. Red River Home, not homes, even though my business is Red River Homes.
Right.
It's redriverhometn.com.
Gotcha.
And there's contact information on there.
So. Well, I mean, I appreciate you coming in. Obviously, this shed light on a subject that's misunderstood, and I can't tell you how many people have reached out and just said, I'm just going to go 5-10 acres and put a house on it, but there's so many, pieces of that puzzle. And, we didn't even talk through, different types of loans, different types of strategies for that. Maybe we get to that in another day, and we bring a loan officer in here. But really appreciate your time, and
thank you, man.
wishing you the best.
Appreciate
for sure.
Thank you.